Hello, I'm Scott Brady with Overland Journal and Expedition Portal, and I am out here with the 2022 Nissan Frontier Pro4X. Now, we've tested this model on a couple different occasions, but it's a really important one for us overlanders, and it is a big improvement over the outgoing model. And we really like the outgoing truck. It was super durable, reliable, affordable, capable on the trail. But there are some things about this new one that really makes a big difference. So we're seeing 54-to-1 low range. We've got an improvement in engine performance as well at 310 horsepower. We also see an improvement in fuel economy. And we've got a locking rear differential. We've got effective brake traction control as well. We have hill descent control. We have a much improved interior experience as well. Much more modern interior, Apple CarPlay, and a much quieter ride overall. So it's a better road trip car in addition to being a much better trail vehicle as well. All right, so we're just entering our test course here. A couple things we've been able to already evaluate. One of the things we're always looking for is tractive performance. These Hankook all-terrains are doing fine on available traction. The vehicle comes with a rear locking differential, which is key to not only reducing wear and tear on the trail, but also increasing driver confidence and that ability to slow everything down. But the other thing that we're always looking for is how does the vehicle perform under left foot braking? So will the vehicle be able to provide brake traction control even when you're left foot braking? A lot of times manufacturers set that up where you can't, where you put a little left foot braking on and it shuts down traction control. Nissan has done that in the past. They did that with the Armada, but they did not do that with the Frontier. So right now I'm at a pretty good tilt. It shows us at just under 30 degrees, which is a pretty significant tilt. The vehicle feels very stable. This is something we do with every vehicle. We really want to get a sense for how stable it feels in terrain like this. It is fairly low to the ground and it feels super stable. So this is an example of that brake traction control. I'm applying just a little bit of left foot braking, and then the vehicle starts to engage traction control and pull me through the obstacle. Now, many would ask, like, why is that important when you've got a rear locking differential? Well, the reason why it's important is because if the terrain is challenging enough, the front is going to need to assist as well. So even with the rear locked, you want brake traction control to be effective with the front axle as well. And it's doing that right now, which is really encouraging. Now, the rear locking differential engages with a button on the left side of the dash, but it is far too low. Something that I've mentioned to Nissan, when the seatbelt is locked, you actually can't reach it. And I'm a tall person with long arms. They do need to move that rear locker button further up the dash so you can access it even when the seatbelt is locked or when you're in a compromised position. All right, so we're gonna come through another cross-axle event here. I've locked the diff. Even on our test track, I really try to do that to minimize any kind of impact to the terrain. That's something we can do as drivers to be mindful of tread lightly, is use those diff locks. The guy who says, I only use four-wheel drive when I need it, they're not doing what we need to be doing to keep trails open. You need to actually engage four-wheel drive when you get to an unimproved surface, engage 4 low once it becomes a 2-track or Jeep track, for example. And then you want to engage those locking differentials before you need them, preemptively, before an obstacle that is either very technical, deeply cross-axled, or has very low traction surface. So you want to engage those diff locks ahead of time, keep the wheel spin to a minimum. Also saves your truck too, keeps you from breaking axles, keeps you from doing unnecessary wear to the tires, etc. So we always do a little breakover challenge here on the trail. It gives us a good sense of appropriate breakover angle. Normally you need just over 20 degrees to be able to clear this obstacle. So this vehicle won't do it, and it's not because the truck won't do it. It has factory installed accessories. Now, the accessory rails are actually pretty nice. They are tight up against the body, and I think that they would work in this situation. But the accessory rails, they come with steps on them. And these steps significantly reduce ground clearance, but they did include a little feature where you could remove them with a hex key and then be able to pull those steps off and gain back all that ground clearance. So right now we're not able to complete the breakover challenge, not because I don't think the truck can do it, but because I don't think the steps can do it without any damage. Okay, let's talk about the pros and cons on this vehicle. We did do a previous video during the launch of the truck, but we've been able to gather a lot more insights from using it on our test track today, because it allows us to compare back to back with a vehicle like, let's say, the Tacoma. There are definitely some upsides to this Nissan Frontier. I really like the low range ratio, so you can hit almost 54:1 low range, which gives a lot of control. So very low speed throttle input, good modulation overall from both the brakes and from the throttle. I like the fact that under left foot braking, you don't get a cancellation of traction control, which is not something that we could test during the initial launch of the vehicle. So that's working, which Nissans have not always done that. So under left foot braking, it is not interrupting brake traction control, which is really important. The other thing we weren't able to test on the launch of the vehicle was articulation. And we can see right now that we're not getting a lot of flexibility out of the rear axle of this vehicle. When you have an independent front suspension and a solid axle rear, the manufacturer has to count on a lot of rear articulation in order to maintain overall performance and stability of the vehicle in cross-axle terrain. But the rear of the Nissan is fairly locked down, and there's a reason for that. It has a super heavy rear anti-sway bar. That's no doubt for safety, on-road handling, performance, but it has a very heavy rear sway bar. It's also the reason why the truck felt so neutral at speed during initial testing. So when you have a little bit heavier rear sway bar, it will allow the vehicle to feel either more neutral or even to oversteer slightly, which is rare to see in a modern vehicle. But this heavy rear sway bar is really limiting articulation, which is why the rear locker is so important. Now, of course, an owner of the vehicle can make some changes to this rear suspension that would allow for a lot more articulation without really having to do a lot of work or spend a lot of money. Of course, that's up to the owner to do that. But in this case, we can see limited articulation out of the rear. All right, let's go through a couple other things that I like about the vehicle. It is very stable, even at nearly 30 degrees of side slope. The vehicle felt very stable overall. Full 32-inch diameter tire on this vehicle on a 17-inch wheel. So you're gonna have plenty of opportunity for airing down. You're also gonna get good overall ground clearance at the axles. You're gonna get a lot better flotation out of such a large tire. So I think that that's a really positive thing for this vehicle. It does have hill descent control. What we noted during the testing was there's not a way to adjust the speed threshold of the hill descent control. It'll be nice to see that in the future from Nissan. The only other complaint that I've got is that the locker switch location is just all wrong. You can't access it easily on the trail, and oftentimes the seatbelt will lock up. So then you can't even reach the rear locker. That needs to be fixed. So they need to move the locker switch further up on the dash.